Gracias. Gracias y bienvenidos a Inmigrantes y aliados, hablando sobre las elecciones 2020. Las elecciones están a la vuelta de la esquina y la decisión que usted, si está registrado para votar, estará tomando, será una de las decisiones posiblemente más importantes de las que usted podrá ser parte en los próximos días. Y le explico por qué. El 3 de noviembre se estará eligiendo quién continuará liderando este país. Esa persona, ese presidente, tomará decisiones que impactarán la vida de muchas personas, incluida la mía. Yo tengo el TPS y dependemos mucho de lo que pueda suceder el 3 de noviembre. También se estará jugando hasta cierto punto la atención que se le continuará proveyendo a nuestra comunidad con el tema del COVID-19. También con el seguro médico y muchas otras cosas que podría continuar mencionando. Pero lo más importante, y queremos que usted entienda, es que nosotros aquí en Inform estamos y hemos tratado siempre de proveerle la información más apropiada, más importante, para que usted pueda tomar una decisión bien informado. Así es que en el episodio de hoy vamos a estar como siempre descubriendo algunos mitos. Por ejemplo, que el presidente es una persona de Dios. Creo que el presidente ha tratado de mostrar que es una persona que cree en Dios, pero en verdad las acciones que él toma contradicen. También estaremos hablando de que el presidente Trump es una persona que respeta los derechos humanos. Bueno, durante los diferentes episodios hemos compartido información con usted y el día de hoy vamos a estar también hablando de algunos mitos y cómo usted se dará cuenta de que lo que dice el presidente o sale en las noticias no precisamente es lo que sucede y lo que estamos sintiendo muchos en nuestras comunidades. Así es que bienvenidos y vamos a descubrir unos mitos como siempre lo hacemos en Inform. Así es que vamos a descubrir mitos sobre, ¿es el presidente una persona de Dios? ¿Es una persona que respeta los derechos humanos? Vamos a buscar más información.
Hi, welcome back to Informed, or welcome if you are new. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about what it means to be a virtuous president, or at the very least, a virtuous person. Today's myths are that Trump is somehow more virtuous than Biden, that he doesn't support hate, that Trump cares about human rights, and that Trump is pro-life. I'm Emiliana. My virtues stem from who I am as a woman of faith, and how I treat people and how I advocate for myself and for others stems from the teachings of my faith.
I'm Jose Palma. Welcome again.
I'm Marshall, and my virtues come from my family experiences and understanding that human life is precious.
And I'm Roxana, and my virtues mostly come from my family, particularly my mother, as well as a lot of literature that I read.
And Roxana will so lovingly start us off with the hot one. Trump is somehow more virtuous than Biden.
Yes, I will. I don't know how this got thrown into the stratosphere of existence, but it did, and now we're going to talk about it. So again, our myth is that Trump is more virtuous than Joe Biden. You know, and in trying to debunk this myth, I kind of asked myself, what does it mean to be virtuous? And what, by definition, how do we measure it? So what I found to be the definition of it was having or showing high moral standards. And there were some words that accompanied it, some synonyms, including ethical, honorable, law-abiding, trustworthy, and unimpeachable. Fellas, I don't know about you, but I don't know if any of these words really define our commander-in-chief.
Oh, roll on that.
But let's go down the gamut and talk about some of these and whether or not Donald Trump can classify himself as these synonyms. Ethical, or rather unethical, is what we should be saying. Trump really prides himself on being somebody for the people and really wanted to defend and honor us and that kind of thing. But if that were the case, then I don't see how Donald Trump could really excuse or explain why migrants at the border are being mistreated in the manner in which they're being mistreated currently.
Sexual assault.
Basically.
Forced hysterectomies.
Yeah, just to name just two of some of the things that have been reported. There's also, again, like a lack of proper, doctoring and being treated medically.
There's no respect whatsoever.
Yeah, just no proper respect at all. Again, for the hysterectomies in particular, I wanted to discuss because in the case of these migrants at the border, most likely who speak Spanish and probably don't have a true fundamental understanding of English, and then they're being forced into these operations at the hands of American doctors who are likely not explaining the procedures to them or explaining why they would even need them in the first place. So then these women are leaving these surgeries not knowing at all what is even wrong with their body or what has been taken from them. Until a nurse, God bless her, who became the whistleblower of the situation. And forced sterilization is something that you might encounter in a history textbook, but you don't expect to hear it from the United States. We hear about it in places such as Africa or Guatemala,
Puerto Rico,
or PR. But to find out that it's happening on your own soil, and this president proceeds to go on as though everything is fine, and that he is such a man of the people it is stunning to me.
Baffling.
Honor, I wouldn't exactly classify Donald Trump as an honorable person. And Trump, for all that he wants to boast that he is such an ally to the military and the people who serve our country, Trump has actually reportedly dodged the draft 5 times. 4 times were as a result of him saying university and him, saying that it's school purposes that he dodged it. The 5th time, however, it was reported that a doctor actually basically wrote up a note saying that he was suffering from bone spurs. Mind you, this doctor had ties to the Trump family, and 2 years prior to that, Trump was actually reported to be in good health and fit for service. And alongside that, there's also the disparaging comments that he has made towards veterans. We actually have a clip of a little statement that he made about John McCain, who actually was a prisoner of war when he served in the military, if we can roll that.
He's not a war hero. He's a war hero. He's a war hero. 5.5 years. He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay? I hate to tell you.
Trump didn't stop there. He also questioned McCain's intelligence.
I said he graduated last or second to last. He graduated last in his class at Annapolis. And he was upset. I said, why? For telling the truth? See, you're not supposed to say that somebody graduated last or second to last in their class, because you're supposed to be, like Frank says, very nice.
Reaction.
There's just no respect or dignity at all anywhere.
None whatsoever.
And I can't imagine any person who is currently serving in the military. I wouldn't call them a loser. I would, if anything, putting your life on the line for your country is such a respectable, very difficult, emotionally, physically, mentally draining experience, I would imagine. We could also move on to trustworthiness. Can you guys think of any example where Trump has shown how trustworthy he is?
We've mentioned this before, and the significance of this one, but he's kept his extent of the knowledge of COVID-19 a secret, purposefully, intentionally, deliberately kept it a secret from all of us. And now over 200,000 of us are dead in this country.
And then my last point, I just want to talk about unimpeachable is also part of virtuosity. How do we feel about that?
He did get impeached.
He literally was impeached.
There is not much to say more than he was impeached.
For the viewers at home, Donald Trump, the 45th president of the United States, was impeached by the House of Representatives on December 18th, 2019.
Proof is in the pudding.
There you go.
Proof, exactly.
Proof is in the pudding. Okay, and with that. I'm glad we're laughing. We're not on the inside. To our second myth, which Palma will talk about for us, Trump doesn't support hate. Ha ha ha.
Trump doesn't support hate. Come on. We're not saying so much.
I know.
And I think it's good that, in a way, we are kind of like laughing because asking the question, Trump doesn't support hate, as some people believe, that's not true. Just a few weeks ago during the debate, he was asked whether he will kind of like say something to the Proud Boys during the debate. And, he pretty much refused. And he said something like, step back and things like that, but he wasn't able to say that is a hate group. Even though, the Proud Boys, is the group that organized the Charlottesville Unite the Right rally that happened. And this is actually the rally where some people drove over.
Yeah.
And, you know, and especially where people of color, people that are kind of like protesting because of asking for dignity, asking for respect. So
the KKK attended that rally, yeah?
Exactly. That's the other thing too. You know, he has been kind of like in a communication with the KKK in a way. I mean, in 2016, he was endorsed by the KKK. And he refused to disable David Duke, who the majority of people know that he's kind of like the head of the KKK. Right. So, you know, there are these type of examples. We can probably continue, mention some more, but this is the thing. In just the last few years of Trump presidency, the hate groups has grown for 55%.
Yeah.
There is a data that I think it shows that there are 155 hate groups across the country. That should be something scary because these groups are not just doing something like, you know, to support Trump, but also to support their ideas, their beliefs, that, you know, some people are better than others and that we have to stay, you know, like away and that we have to stop these people. But in reality, what they are doing is pretty much just keeping away from real conversations about real issues that are happening. So we can continue, but we have some other myths to continue unbanking.
Yeah. Before we move on very, 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 very quickly, Trump told a crowd of nearly all white supporters that they had good genes, which just echoes the views of neo-Nazis and the idea that white people are genetically superior. That's weird. Very heavy white supremacist vibes. And with that, Marshall's going to talk to us. He's going to talk to us about the idea that Trump cares about human rights.
Yeah. So there's this myth that Trump cares about human rights. Let's just first define human rights. They can be defined as rights inherited to all human beings regardless of race, sex, nationality, ethnicity, language, religion, or any other status. Human rights include the right to life and liberty, freedom from slavery and torture, freedom of opinion and expression, the right to work and education, and many more. Everyone is entitled to these rights without discrimination. There's so much evidence of him like clearly disregarding all of that, like due to specific statuses. So like, where can we even start? Let's start with like work and education. I mean, first we can talk about, you know, the military transgender policy, not allowing those that identify as transgender to enlist in the military and proudly serve their country. Just like going off of like what you said, you know, he says that he's such a proud, you know,
proud ally to the military and the LGBTQ at some
point.
Yeah.
But he doesn't even allow those. He doesn't even allow people to openly be who they are and serve the country that they love so much.
Right.
And that if they do want to serve this country, that they have to enlist as their assigned gender at birth, which is just kind of like stripping away their identity, kind of, you know what I mean? He removed all mentions of like LGBT rights and support from like the White House page, like right when he got elected.
It's so transparent.
Exactly. Like what, just immediately, and like getting rid of the lavender scare apology, which was a whole scare in like the 1950s and 60s about like LGBT workers and like the government being like communist sympathizers and like national security risks.
He's literally trying to like erase history.
Yeah.
Like he wants people who log onto his page to not even know that
that was a thing.
That was a thing, or that these people exist.
His goal is to regress.
Exactly.
So weird.
That he cared about human rights, that's completely out of the step. Like you know what? During the last few weeks, he pretty much ordered the Department of Labor to stop conversations about white supremacist conversations, and he stopped pretty much saying like those conversations are not allowed. You know, in this administration. So when people say that he cares about human rights, I don't know what they're talking about. But we're seeing on the
I don't know where they're getting their information from.
Really, like how people like in like restaurants or in schools would be like, oh, I don't talk about politics. That's the president being like, I don't talk about politics.
Exactly.
It's the same thing.
It's the same exact thing. And like going back, like thinking about like education. Like think of all the work that he's done with like Betsy. You know, like
Miss Betsy.
Miss Betsy. You know, she owns a lot of charter schools, and you know, all they've done is just cut so much funding
to public schools
and give it to charter and private schools. But
so one of the questions, Michelle, that people should be asking themselves, where your kids are going to school, do they have good computers?
Yeah.
Do they
Think
have
about it.
after-school programs?
Yep.
Are they receiving enough funding for them to have after-school programs for them to, keep them busy? If those things are not happening, there is something to do.
One of your rights is being a little tested right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But why don't we talk some of the other rights really quick? Opinion and expression, life and liberty, slavery and torture. I think all of those can just go under like how he talks about like Black Lives Matter and the entire movement.
Talk about Black Lives Matter.
Exactly. He thinks that is a symbol of hate. Sir, it's a movement to gain human rights that everyone else is entitled to. Like some of the things that they strive for is to end war on Black people, political voice,
Yes.
Systemic racism. Yeah, like defining this as a symbol of hate is like hypocritical. You know what I mean? He states that it's a revolution and that we will win and that they will lose, or like.
Yeah, he's literally trying to pit it as like almost like a race war. Like, oh my God,
exactly.
Like, oh my God, they're trying to like take over us and replace us and that kind of thing. We can't allow that to happen. And it's like it almost
White
like
supremacist way of thinking.
Exactly.
And for some Latinos that are watching us having this conversation, I think we have to go a little bit back in the United States history when Black people were hanged, where people were slaves. For some of us, actually, we are eating the fruit of this community suffering. And now sometimes we get to put against each other to say those Black people and those Latino people. At the end of the day, this guy doesn't matter whether you are Black, Latino or not. If you're not rich and millionaire, he doesn't love
it doesn't
you.
Matter.
yeah.
He's just using his freedom of opinion and expression basically to shut down and deny the people that are fighting for the same right.
Yeah.
And like there are so many others. Like we can talk about Muslim travel ban, Planned Parenthood shutdown, TPS removal. Like all of these acts and policies are direct attacks to our basic human rights in one way or another. And we need to use our freedom of opinion and expression to vote and do what we can to keep those rights we have. I mean, we're human. We're entitled to them. Come on.
Yes. As humans, I think we would also say that we're all entitled to life.
Exactly.
Which brings us to our last myth, that Trump is pro-life. And I want to ask, what does it mean to be pro-life? And I think the answer to that would simply be the belief in the right to life. But that means from birth to death and everything that happens in between. And so to be against the intentional killings of innocent human beings, understandable and virtuous, yes, I agree. However, let us recount what Trump has done himself to innocent human beings and his entire administration. He's put them in cages. We've mentioned this before, but it's because it's so devastating and it hits so hard, and we can't wrap our heads around this at all. But in immigrant detention, as young as 2 or 3 years old, these kids are separated from their caretakers and kept in jail-like facilities. Photos here. Also, if he's so pro-life, where is his advocacy for people's lives when it comes to victims of COVID? He dismissed their trauma and the deaths that have occurred in this country by saying, don't let it dominate your life, don't be afraid. And how are people supposed to do that exactly? If this trauma is so significant and collective, it's everywhere all the time, and it doesn't look like it's going to end anytime soon. He refused to condemn white supremacy, simply refused to. And so what about all the people whose lives are affected by white supremacy? Every single one of us.
Disregarding.
Just
completely disregarding
us.
all of that.
Yeah,
We're nothing but a number.
Yeah. So there's that. He invites and incites violence. I've said this before, and I'll say it till I die. He invites that violence against people who are not like-minded, who do not want to vote for him, and who do not feel safe under his leadership. He doesn't want us to feel safe, and he doesn't want us to feel like we can go out and vote to get him out of here. As for us, for what it means to be pro-choice, it means that we are pro-reproductive rights. So even though I would not get an abortion, it does not mean that I have the right to tell somebody else that they cannot. It's birth prevention for people who are in financial, mental, or physical positions that they cannot adequately give birth and provide for children. Because what happens when there's sexual assault that results in pregnancy? And a 13-year-old cannot be a mother. What happens then? And parenthood is the most significant time and energy consuming responsibility in the entire world. I think we can agree.
Oh, yeah.
And so we know that people are going to have abortions whether they're legal or not. So we just want people to be safe. And we know that abortions are going to happen in dangerous and unsanitary conditions if they are made completely illegal, and we just need to be smarter and more compassionate than that.
Yeah, and this is one of those issues that has been very ishy, and some people actually are using it in a way to motivate people to vote against their own self-interest. For example, I know people who have been telling me, you know what, I can't vote for Biden because he supports abortion. So voting for Trump is doing better for everyone else? Probably not. Like, I think even Pope Francis has been saying that being pro-life doesn't mean you have to elect a president that will destroy someone else's life when they are born. He has been actually advising that being pro-life is to protect everyone's life, especially the vulnerable. I think that's the message that we hear in our churches wherever we go. You know, I'm a father. I have 3 daughters, actually. I am sure one of them, or maybe the 3 of them, they will get pregnant. So what I have to do as a parent is to support them. But what happened is that sometimes we got so much information in our head that some leaders in our church are telling us, you know, you have to vote for this president because he supports abortion. But the reality is that some leaders, they also have their own beliefs and their own way of thinking. I think we have to be smarter than that, and I think we have to really put in practice the teaching that we usually get at the church, that we have to take care for the vulnerable. So that means taking care for the immigrants who are at risk of being separated from their family, or protecting that woman that is getting sterilized without their consent. Or those immigrants who are in the border. Actually, one Catholic, one of these days on Facebook told me, but we have to protect the unborn because they cannot defend themselves. So when I said, but what about the kids who are in cages at the border? They said, oh, that's the parents' mistake. Why their parents are bringing their kids? So now it is a sin to look for a better for your family and for your kids? Come on. That's not. You know, when our kids went to Rome advocating for TPS, Pope Francis said, immigrating is a human right, and no one can take that away from you. That's what he said. So now we have to take that in consideration, and we have to protect the people who are suffering at this moment. I mean, in reality, I don't think we will find a perfect president to elect somebody who will do everything the way we want, but we have to see the priorities and realities at the specific moment.
Yeah, I think that, I think a great juxtaposition between how Biden and how Trump, express their faith. Joe Biden is a Catholic man, and there was an interview once where he talked about how his faith helped him when his son passed away. And just a very quick snippet of that in this clip.
Kierkegaard said, faith sees best in the dark. And for me, my religion is just an enormous sense of solace. And some of it relates to ritual, some of it relates to just comfort of what you've done your whole life. I go to Mass and I'm able to be, it's just alone. Even in a crowd, you're alone. I say the rosary. I find it to be incredibly comforting. And so what my faith has done is it sort of takes everything about my life with my parents and my siblings and all the comforting things and all the good things that have happened around the culture of my religion and the theology of my religion. And I don't know how to explain it more than that, but it's just...
But if you were to compare that and how that demonstration of faith is so different from Donald Trump, who he had like a little photo op in front of like a church, or he was holding up a Bible or something like that. And prior to that, he was having, protesters, taken care of by like cops and stuff like that.
That's the part that they don't pass. They just put the photo with the Bible.
Exactly.
But they don't say that before going to take that picture, he sent the police to remove protesters from the area,
gas them.
drag them, gas them in order for him to go and say.
Just to be...
Exactly. And if that doesn't demonstrate how his...
Hypocrisy.
His hypocrisy, just his way of using faith and religion as a means to just portray an image of himself, which is not in any way accurate to what he has done through his actions and what he has done in his past, his present, and probably yesterday, then I don't really know what could convince other people otherwise.
Yeah. Exactly.
I want to close with a couple verses of mine that not of mine. I didn't read the Bible. But they are some of my favorite verses, and I think about them a lot. And I think that they're important to hear whether you are a person of faith or not. And the first is Romans chapter 12, verse 9 through 10, and verse 15. Don't just pretend to love others. Really love them. Hate what is wrong. Hold tightly to what is good. Love each other with genuine affection and take delight in honoring each other. Be happy with those who are happy and weep with those who weep. And the second that I want to share is Matthew 25, verse 42 through 45. For I was hungry and you didn't feed me. I was thirsty and you didn't give me a drink. I was a stranger and you did not invite me into your home. I was naked and you didn't give me clothing. I was sick and in prison, and you didn't visit me. Then they will reply, Lord, when did we ever see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or sick and in prison and not help you? And he will answer, I tell you the truth. When you refuse to help the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you are refusing to help me. And so with that,
very deep.
We are informed. And we want you to stay healthy, stay safe, stay informed, and vote. Join us next time.
The wrap-up. This is our show in 3 minutes. Our show is Informed. Immigrants and Allies talk the 2020 election. This week's show is on morality, virtues, and a bit about that grand taboo, religion. That's right, we're going there with Trump and Biden. Trump wants to pretend that Trump is a very religious man. So much so that he'll gas a bunch of protesters to brandish a Bible like a sign twirler for a photo op in front of a church outside the gates of the White House. And despite the former pastor of that church saying Trump's actions were a sacrilege for all people of all faiths, Trump still gets some of the devout to buy into his feigned piety. During this episode, we tackle the myths of Trump's virtuosity and others. First, we found some of the synonyms for a virtuous person. Kind, honest, honorable, and unimpeachable were a few. We point out that Trump has none of these qualities. He has condoned and endorsed the separation of children from their parents and the forced hysterectomies of immigrant women because they are poor and people of color. He is mean and petty with his enemies and his allies, bullying people with insults like horseface or fat pigs, and even calling honorable war heroes losers. By definition, he can't be unimpeachable, because he has literally been impeached by Congress. And if it weren't for McConnell with an assist by lockstep Republicans, we would have seen more of it. And he lies through his teeth. The Washington Post found that as of July of this year of Trump's presidency, Trump has made more than 20,000 false or misleading claims. He's lied so many times, if he were Pinocchio, he'd be sniffing his own ass from around the world. This is in stark contrast to Biden, who has said he leaned on his faith to help him get through the loss of his son, a personal faith, which guides his own attempts at right action. Now, some say that we should vote for Trump because he is pro-life, and that is his stance in words, but we must look at all of his policies and actions as well. So when he supports hate groups, undermines the Black Lives Matter movement by calling them extremists and rioters, deliberately separates children from their parents and undermines public education, he can't really claim he is pro-life. Pro-life needs to mean life, from birth to death, not just in the womb. Trump is pro-controlling women's bodies, not pro-life. During this election, we find ourselves at an inflection point in the American experiment, when we have been confronted with our own contradictions, our own moral dilemmas, and religion can be one thing to help us find a way through this. Maybe we can return to faith, hope, and love. We know we want to be proud of our accomplishments as Americans, and we must still acknowledge the shame of our oppressive systems and attitudes. We must recognize that for generations our systems have been rigged against people of color and immigrants, while being hopeful and applying that hope to change. Because as Jesus said, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. So, what have you done? And what will you do? Our decision comes now. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay informed, and vote. See you after November 3rd.
Estamos llegando ya al final de este episodio, que posiblemente será el último antes de que usted va a ir a votar. Y si ya fue, pues gracias. Pero para muchos el noviembre 13 es el día que van a salir a votar. Y por eso yo le quiero agradecer por estarse informando por medio de nosotros, por medio de Inform, y también por tomar en consideración nuestras sugerencias. Espero que usted está haciendo sus planes de cómo va a llegar al lugar de votación. Recuerde que el día de las elecciones usted estará decidiendo por el futuro de muchas personas como yo. 400,000 personas con TPS dependemos de lo que usted va a decidir. Este presidente está tratando de destruir nuestras familias. Espero que usted esté planeando elegir un nuevo presidente. Cerca de 700,000 familias estarán sufriendo si los jóvenes de DACA pierden su permiso de trabajo para estar aquí en los Estados Unidos. Y algo muy importante también, usted con su voto puede salvar muchas vidas que estarán sufriendo del COVID-19. Al menos que usted elija un presidente más responsable y tome decisiones correctas, y usted, por medio de su voto, podrá salvarles la vida de esas personas. Así que la responsabilidad es grande. Y si usted es de las personas religiosas que a veces piensan, no, yo no puedo apoyar a un presidente porque este presidente apoya el aborto, tome en consideración tanto la información que hemos compartido durante cuando estuvimos descubriendo los mitos, pero también acuérdese que un presidente que rige y dirige un país como los Estados Unidos no puede ser electo solamente en una situación, solamente por un tema. Y aún más importante, tenemos que acordarnos que tenemos que proteger las personas desde antes que nacen, cuando están creciendo, hasta que fallecen. No es que vamos a apoyar a alguien solamente porque nos dice que nos apoya en el tema para proteger a alguien que todavía no ha nacido. Esa vida es muy importante, pero también es importante la vida de estos 545 niños que han sido separados de sus padres y no saben ni dónde están. También es importante la vida de esos 250,000 jóvenes nacidos en los Estados Unidos que estarán siendo separados de sus familias si este presidente continúa. Así es que al momento de pensar quedarse en casa, piense en esas familias que dependen de usted. Piense en todo lo bueno que puede hacer para su comunidad, para este país, por medio de escoger un nuevo presidente. La decisión es suya. Espero que tome la correcta. Manténgase saludable, manténgase informado y manténgase seguro. Y haga sus planes para ir a votar. Gracias.